If you've been looking into HubSpot Data Hub Professional, especially their pricing page, you're probably more confused than ever. And so in this video, I'm going to walk through all of the features inside Data Hub Professional and how you can use it in a real business, as well as the overlapping features of the other hubs that HubSpot offers. I'm Dan Saavedra from MergeYourData, and let's take a look. Now, before we jump into this, if you end up having any questions around whether Data Hub makes sense to upgrade for your organization, we offer a free 15-minute Data Hub assessment call where you will talk to an actual pro about what you're looking to use Data Hub for and whether or not the price tag actually makes sense in that situation. The reality is that it doesn't make sense for everyone. So we make sure that the investment is actually going to pay off for you. But let's actually jump into HubSpot here. Now, the first thing we're going to do is actually go over to the pricing page to look at the features that HubSpot has listed for professional versus starter. And we won't spend too much time here. I just want to call some things out. If you expand all of the plan details here, you'll see in the professional column what you actually get. Now, some of these are overlapping with other plans, especially if you have Marketing Hub Professional or Sales Hub Professional. The main thing to know is that there are workflow actions that you will not get in other plans. You get increased limits on things like reporting and calculated properties, as well as teams. And then you also get additional labels for associations. But everything else is pretty much unique to Data Hub Professional. So when it comes to programmable automation, webhooks, custom revenue reporting, duplicate management, data quality automation, and webhook workflow triggers, that's all stuff you will only find in Data Hub Professional or above. You can also see here that each seat is $800 per month for the Data Hub Professional. So it's not meant to be used across your entire organization. It's really meant for the specialists who will be building out things inside of HubSpot. So with all that being said, let's jump into the actual tool here. In the first place, we're going to start out is the workflow features that you unlock with Data Hub Professional, because these are critical and oftentimes the most important feature that people update for. And so the specific things that you unlock with Data Hub Professional are being able to run workflows on a schedule. So you can actually schedule them to run daily or weekly at certain times, and as well as off of a webhook when a webhook is received from another platform. And so that's not available if you do not have Data Hub Professional. It opens up the ability to get instant updates into HubSpot from other systems without having to use Zapier or some other middleware tool. On top of that, there's another feature that's layered in that is not available without Data Hub Professional, and that's to trigger a workflow from a data set on a schedule. So it's a little bit of a combination. You can run the workflow on a schedule that we just covered. Then you can also use this new data set functionality and data studio functionality to trigger workflow runs. And so the triggers are the first thing that are unlocked inside of workflows with Data Hub Professional. Now, the next thing that's unlocked are these data ops functionalities. And so you'll have the ability to use custom code, meaning you can run any Python or JavaScript inside of the workflow using inputs from HubSpot and then outputting it into fields that you can use later on in the workflow to sync back to your actual data in HubSpot. On top of that, you get format data, which is like a simpler version of custom code where you can just manipulate numbers using various string and number functions. And then last but not least, you can actually send webhooks to other platforms. So you can do the same thing in the custom code. You can call APIs from inside the custom code, but you can also send webhooks immediately to other platforms using that step. So all of this rolled up together, you're actually going to unlock HubSpot to pretty much do anything you need inside of the platform. You're going to be able to take over about 90% of use cases of Zapier or Make or N8N or those other middleware platforms. Now, that doesn't mean you get to take away everything, but it significantly reduces your usage of those platforms so you can keep everything inside of HubSpot and make it simpler to maintain and use for your whole team. These workflow actions are the most popular part of Data Hub Professional from what we've seen, and it's one of the top reasons to upgrade your HubSpot account with Data Hub Professional. Now let's move on to the next feature called Data Agent. And so Data Agent is one of HubSpot's newer features. You can see it's still in beta here at the time of this video. It uses HubSpot credits, but it basically uses AI to gather information, do research, and put that directly into records inside of HubSpot. And so you can see that they have different things down here: smart properties, smart columns, and smart actions that you can configure inside Data Agent so that you don't have to go and hook up things like Clay or maybe some N8N functionality to pull very basic agent type tasks and data into HubSpot. There's always the use cases of Clay and of those external platforms, but this is going to take over a lot of the really basic use cases. So you can see here, they have some smart property examples where you can do research around upcoming company changes and events, objections raised, and other things. And basically, the cool part of this is that you can actually use call transcripts inside of HubSpot to generate outputs into these properties. So the sky's the limit with this. I'll show you some of the ones that we have configured here just because they're pretty cool to look at. And so right now you can put them on the company or the contact object, and you can do things like account plan notes. So we can research this company's publicly available information, including all of their values, strategic goals, recent initiatives, news, and team structure, and then align that to our own services and offerings. We can extract from call transcript the agreed on next steps and put that on the contact object. We can look for budget signals. We can look for growth or contraction indicators from calls, or we can use web research and have another output. And so the list goes on with what you can use Data Agent for and how you can pull that into workflows in HubSpot, use it with your sales team, surface it at the right moment, create lists for marketing. The list just goes on with what you can use Data Agent for. And so this is one of the main things in Data Hub Professional that is enabled. Now, there is a main distinction to make between what you need Data Hub Professional for with the Data Agent and what you don't. If you want to trigger workflows based off of Data Agent outputs, you will need Data Hub Professional. And that's the main distinction between just using Data Agent and having the data updated in your CRM and then actually triggering other actions off of it. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to go into is the new Data Studio from HubSpot. So if you ran into data sets before, you'd already be familiar with those, which are basically just like pre-created combinations of different data and objects inside of HubSpot that you can then use in reporting and also sometimes in workflows, I believe. Can't remember that off the top of my head. But basically, you can create calculate property, you do a little bit of data manipulation and building some relationships between the different objects in HubSpot. But with Data Studio, you can now actually bring in external data sources and then bring that and combine that with HubSpot data, kind of like a Clay functionality, almost like Clay Lite, I would say. And so when you're in here in Data Studio, you can see here the data sets, which there are some pre-built data sets in here. You can see HubSpot data sources. So these are all the objects inside of HubSpot with the details around them. You can even go to like the marketing objects with all of their specific data sources. And then you have external data sources here. And so we don't have any in this account, but if we did connect external data source, it'll show up to allow us to add a static file or to add in data continuously from an app. And so this is the major new portion of HubSpot and the Data Studio. You can connect things like Stripe, Xero, Google Sheets, Excel sheets, and the list just goes on and on. You can see here that there's just tons of data sources that you can sync into HubSpot, and they keep adding more and more. Now, there are a few that are locked in Data Hub Professional, and you need to have Data Hub Enterprise to use, and that's Snowflake, BigQuery, and then some of the other cloud platforms that you might use to store data. And if I'm going to be quite honest, those types of platforms get a little bit expensive anyways to use inside of Data Studio because you're going to need to use credits in order to sync from different data platforms. Now, to bring it all back to an actual use case, you can kind of imagine how powerful it would be to use the Data Agent, combine it with external data sources, and then run workflows off of it. You can truly orchestrate all of your data inside of HubSpot directly without having to have data engineers on the team, without having to use external data sources, data warehouses to do everything. Now, there's still a huge use case for those, but for the basic use cases, you can still do everything inside of HubSpot without having to ask for additional support, especially when it comes to the sheets, syncs, and manipulations. And so just as an example, I'm going to go into the data sets and actually build out the data studio just a little bit. We'll do like a minute or two on this just so you can see what it looks like and see how advantageous it is to use this. And so basically over here on the right-hand side, we can choose a primary data source. And so I can add things like contacts, for example, and then I can add a secondary data source in here. And I'm just going to keep this very standard. I'm going to add in deals. Then I'm going to add another secondary data source. I'm going to click a new source, and I'm going to search for Sheets, and then go through connecting to Google Sheets. And so when I select a sheet from my drive, you can see that I can choose the different sheets inside of that actual Google Sheet. And then you can select a column header row as well. I'm just using a sample Apollo import for this. And then I can click on next. And I can choose which columns I actually want to pull over into HubSpot here. And so then I'll just click add data source. And so now this is actually added into the data set inside of HubSpot. So if I wanted to add in the Google Sheet as the actual, as a data source in here and combine it with other data, I'll click on add secondary source, choose the sheet that I just added. And then I actually want to match this with companies because it's a company data set. So I'm going to do combine with another source, companies. And so now I can do company domain name and match it here. And then I want to do one match maximum per record. Click on save. And so now this data is going to be pulled into this data set preview. And so now if I want to build out the actual data set, I go to this columns over here and I can start adding columns from the different data sources. I can use data agent in order to create a smart column. I can use enrichment to fill in any gaps. I can use formulas like a spreadsheet in order to just manipulate the data however I want. And then I can also do modifiers, so I can apply capitalization or trim white space. And so this really opens up what you can do inside of HubSpot because now we're bringing everything into one spot. We're combining all the data, and then we can build our reports in HubSpot. We can trigger our workflows in HubSpot using external data brought into the platform. So I won't go any deeper on this just because this is a really, really great feature with a lot of things to dive into. But from a high level, you can see the power that's packed into it because it combines the enrichment, the data agent, the different HubSpot data with external data sources, and then gives you unlimited possibilities on what you can build. Okay, and then we're going to switch over to the last feature that is unique to Data Hub Professional and above, and that's data quality. And so in the data quality section over here, you can see quite a few different options of how you can make your data cleaner and more usable inside of HubSpot. The first thing you're going to see is this summary page, which has your duplicate issues, your formatting issues, and your enrichment gaps that HubSpot has identified. So it's just a quick way to see issues in your portal without having to manually go and search for them. And so down here, you even have recommended actions to take where you can just click on these buttons. So like view formatting issues, and it'll bring you exactly to where you need to go in order to review and apply those changes. Now, if I go back to the overview page and scroll further down, you can also see property insights, which is just a high level summarization of properties that might be able to be removed. Now, it's not always the case. You have to dig into it, but overall it gives a pretty good overview. And then up top here, you have manage duplicates. So if I go over here, to the companies for the manage duplicates, you can see that HubSpot uses different criteria to try to see exactly where there are duplicate records and how you can merge them together. And so you can do this manually. So you can review it. You can compare different properties on the records to see if you want to actually merge these or not. And then you can choose which one to keep. The other thing that you can do is you can create a custom rule. And this is a newer thing. So you can add a custom rule here. Let me refresh this because it looks like there was a issue. But you can create a custom rule for companies or contacts. You can select up to 3 different properties for that rule. So let's say we'll do like city, close date, and company name. We're just going to name this a test rule. So that means that instead of relying off of HubSpot's matching rules, you can set specific criteria to identify duplicates inside of your system. And so this is especially useful if you have unique identifiers that you've put into the account. And for whatever reason, maybe you didn't make them unique, but you can use those as the properties that HubSpot's revealing to identify the duplicates. And so beyond duplicates, you also have formatting issues. So you have your different rules that you can use down here to find and correct any issues that are occurring with name formatting, location formatting, spacing, emails, stuff like that. You can turn on automation rules so that HubSpot actually just automatically takes care of this, and you won't have to do any of these manual reviews yourself. Last but not least, there is also the data enrichment tab where you can scan your entire portal and see if you have any gaps in enrichment. If you do, you can have HubSpot fix those. If you don't, that's great, but you can always turn on your enrichment settings there and have it automatically enrich all records for free coming into your HubSpot account. And then there's also property insights. And so this one will just show you different properties that might be able to be removed because they either don't have data, they're unused, or they're a potential duplicate. And so overall, those are the main features of Data Hub Professional. If you are having trouble bringing data together inside of HubSpot, cleaning data that's already inside of HubSpot, analyzing data, or having specific workflow actions, and you have to create a bunch of workarounds to get what you want done, then Data Hub Professional is actually a pretty good investment for one operations person to use to clean up the account, to keep it clean, and to extend the platform beyond just what's contained inside of HubSpot. If you are looking for specific advice on whether Data Hub Professional makes sense for you and your organization, book a call with the link in the video description below, and we'll do a free assessment for 15 minutes, looking over your account, talking about what you're looking to use Data Hub Professional for, and determining whether or not that investment actually makes sense and will drive a return. I'm Dan Saavedra from MergeYourData. Thanks for watching.